privilege and honor to introduce our speaker tonight, Charles B. DeBellevue. I just call him Chuck. And I've known Chuck for a long time. You're not only in for a good talk, but you meet a good guy, so come up and say hi to him sometime. He was born in New Orleans. Did you get any beads? New Orleans, Louisiana on August 15th, 1925. Chuck DeBellevue grew up in Louisiana. He graduated from the University of Southern Louisiana in 1968 with a commission as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force through the university and AFROTC program. In 1969, he applied for and was accepted into a graduated navigator training at Mather Air Force Base, California, following which he completed the F4 combat crew training. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. And was assigned to the 355th Tech Fighter Squadron as an F4D weapon system officer. We call them guys in the back. In October 1972, Chuck DeBellevue was sent to the Triple Nickel Tactical Fighter Squadron 432, Tactical Reconnaissance Wings TAC Fighter Weapons School at Udorn Royal Air Force Base, Thai Air Force Base in Thailand, flying the F-4D as a Wizzo with the pilot Captain Steve Ritchie. On 10 May 1972, he and Steve scored the first of 4 MiG-21 kills that would achieve they achieved together. Secretly assigned to fly with Captain John Madden in the 13th Attack Fighter Squadron 432, the two were credited with the destruction of 2 MiG-21s during linebacker on September 9, 1972. With the decision of the Air Force and the Navy to credit U.S. Air Force Wizzos, United States intercept officers with equal credit for their pilots and aerial victories, and gave Chuck DeBellevue credit for 6 victories, evaluating him in recognition for the American Fighter Aces. Now, a little thing aside, the Air Force and the Navy and the Marine Corps recognized the backseater as aces. The American Fighter Aces didn't. The second I took over as Fighter Aces, I got together with Ward. Ward and I put together on an amendment to our program, and we made them not only honorary, but full-fledged Fighter Aces. And I'm proud that we did that, and I call him an ace. And if he was flying my wing, I'd be real happy. Following the assignment of the Triple Nickel TFS or TPS, during which he logged 220 combat missions, 96 of which were over North Vietnam, Chuck DeBellevue was sent to pilot training at Williams Air Force Base, Arizona. He returned to the F4 and 49 Tactical Wing as a Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico. This was followed by assignment in Alaska, Japan, and several other bases in the U.S. After promotion to full colonel, he was served as Commander of Air Force Receiving Officer. That means he's the base CO, which is pretty important. Training Corps, AFROTC, at the University of Missouri. Now, I graduated from MSU. I'm a Missouri Tiger. My wife is a fiend about the Arkansas Razorbacks. I put an arrow in the Razorbacks back with my bow, and she didn't like that, but I wanted to kill that pig. So I'm glad that you're a Missouri Tiger, and I hope you still root for him, Chuck. He retired from active duty in Officer Training Corps at the University of Missouri. He retired from the active duty January 1998 with the Career Awards of Air Force Cross, 3 Silver Stars, 3 Legions of Merit, and Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, and 18 Air Medals. With that, I would like to honor and have you stand in honor of Chuck DeBellevue. Go get him, kid.
Okay. When I first got to Missouri, great football. When I first got to Missouri, they had a great football team, I thought. The first football game, I don't remember who they were playing, but they received the touchdown, the football on the kickoff, and ran for a touchdown. And I go, this is gonna be a great game. They recalled that touchdown, and the rest of the season went the same way. Missouri had the luxury of having 2 football teams. One that would win the first 3 quarters, and the other one that would lose the last quarter. You know, so it's all relative. Let me get out here in front. So, it is indeed a pleasure to be here. General Anderson, Commander Cunningham, thanks for inviting me. You know, we're all here for the same reason, for God and country. Whether you served a long time ago like we did, or you're currently serving, it's to keep this country free. That doesn't come cheap, and usually it's paid for in blood. And we always have to be ready. So one of the questions I get asked a lot I flew with Steve Ritchie. The question is usually, was Steve Ritchie set up to be the first ace? No, he was not. Bob Lodge was. Lodge and his backseater Roger Locker had, on 10th of May, they had 3 kills when the MiG-19 got 1 kill. Roger got out of the airplane at the last nanosecond, flipped over the ridge line, and landed on the opposite side of the hill from the airplane. And there was no rescue there, and we knew that. That if we got shot down in the Hanoi area or north, there was no rescue. You're on your own. It took him 3 weeks to walk far enough south for the helicopter to get to him. When they finally figured out he was still alive, because we didn't know for a while, for 3 weeks, the helicopter had 2 minutes of loiter time. That was it. At the end of the 2 minutes, they're going home. So, you know, and the rest was history. Okay, let's get started here. For those of you that don't know where French Indochina is, this is French Indochina. It's a long way away, half a world away here. I was stationed at Unorn. All the laser bombers came out of Uman. Navy flew off a Yankee station. The 105s came out of Takli and Karat. Unorn was the closest American base to Hanoi. 285 miles distance. So whenever we got started the dogfight, we had to make sure we had enough gas to get all the way home. Otherwise, they get killed. Now, I don't know what the most important gauge is in the F-35 is, but in the F-4, it was the fuel gauge. Because that thing would suck gas like it's going out of style, especially in the afterburner. And it wasn't that efficient when it wasn't an afterburner. And this is North Vietnam. The main targets, the Panama Bridge, the Dragon's Jaw. We lost 35 F-105s and some F-4s and some Navy jets trying to destroy the bridge. We finally did on the 10th of May. Hanoi, the Hanoi Railroad Bridge and the Paul Dummer Bridge were big targets. Tainan and steel mills, that was a big target. And then there were a lot of things along the Ho Chi Minh Trail between Laos and North Vietnam that were always running the trail. I started out as a high-speed forward air controller, only in North Vietnam. So we would go running around North Vietnam at 600 knots looking for targets. And it's amazing, the first time you do that, you don't see anything. But the third time you do that, you're running through the passes at 600 knots, there's trucks, missile, you start picking up stuff, and you put target, your fighters in on the target. Most important person on my crew chief.
Yeah.
And if you don't think he's the most important person, try to launch the airplane without him. I took an airplane to Canada. They wouldn't touch the jet. I had to put oxygen in it, I had to stuff the drag chute in it. It's a tough job. Reggie could do anything with the jet. He took the engines on the jet we flew, which sits at the Air Force Academy, and has 6 stars on it, and tweaked the fuel controls. So when we finally got done, you measured the temperature coming out of the back end of the engine. The maximum temperature was 600 degrees centigrade. When we got done, we were burning 600 degrees centigrade plus a skosh. The chief of maintenance was not very happy with us. We said, we don't care, just have another set of engine weight. You know, if you go into combat with cold engines, you're going to lose the whole airplane. And the other guys that were the most important were the guys that took care of the missiles. A motley crew. It's dirty work. The missiles stayed on our airplane 10 rides. If we didn't use the missiles, they would download it, take it to munitions maintenance, and tweak them up. Now, the Navy didn't like the AIM-7, the radar missile we carried. It's a tube set. When they slam it on the carrier, the tubes come loose. So that's what these guys did. They reset the tubes. And we finally got the missiles to where you could fire one and get a kill. I don't know about the Navy, but the most important thing we did at the end of the mission where we got a kill, paint the damn airplane. It pays to advertise. Yeah. This is the map I made to go to Hanoi every day. The circles are 10 nautical mile circles. So Hanoi, 10, 20, 30, 40, and the azimuths every 30 degrees. That's how we navigated. We didn't have any fancy systems. The INS didn't work that well. So you navigated off of Hanoi off of a paper map. And these Mickey Mouse ears, that's where the SAM radars could see you at 12,000 feet. And the closer you got to Hanoi, the lower they could see you. There was no hiding. Now, these were not state-of-the-art, today's state-of-the-art missiles. These were yesterday's state-of-the-art missiles. They were analog. So when the missile was fired at you, if you didn't see it, it was deadly. If you did see it, you had a chance. If it wasn't moving on your canopy, if it was a dot, it was on a collision course with you. You got to do something. If it's moving, your buddy has to do something because it's his. And you had about 3 seconds to figure it out. And if you figure it out wrong, there's no second ride. You're done. The missile would go off underneath the airplane, and it would have a shaped warhead on it, and it would just throw a garbage can full of crap at you and shred the airplane. So if you didn't see it, it was deadly. So you got to do that every day. And the new guys, when you took them up with you, if they didn't do it right, their replacements try it again. The first mission I flew with Steve on the 10th of May. We were up by Thug Ridge. We were in this area. We had a specially modified F-4D. It didn't work on the E-models. It didn't work on the Navy jets, probably because they had a pulse Doppler radar. We had just a pulse radar. But it was, they called it combat tree. It was an IFF interrogator. IFF, that's what air traffic control uses to control the airplanes. Well, we used it to find the MiGs. I had an IFF interrogator that interrogated SOC 57, which is the IFF interrogator in a MiG-21. If I got a good enemy return back and we were leading the fleet in, we could shoot and never see the guy. What an advantage. You know, all of a sudden he just blew up. Nobody knew. It was a highly classified system. The unclassified code name was classified. You couldn't even talk about it. And the way I got trained on the system was I had one engine running. I had the test guy that ran the test program sitting on the ramp, the top of the engine, going, you do this, you hit that. If it comes like back here, he's enemy. That was my operate. One ride, one guy, one ride, and then you're good to go. So we're coming in. We're 4 of us. I have one of these special birds, combat tree birds. My roommate's leading. He's got the same airplane, same type of airplane. We're doing some cryptic talking because you can't use the radio very much. We're getting at 17 miles head on. The MiG will come in range. We'll be able to ping him on the radar. So you lock on about that point, and about 13, 14 miles, he comes in range for the missiles. You can start shooting at that point. So lead shoots, gets a kill. 2 shoots, gets a kill. We shoot. The missile smokes bad. Now you carry the MRAMs, they don't smoke. Right? Well, the AIM-7 smokes bad. Now, if the guy is out of range, it's a good thing, because if you're 1v1 with a MiG and you fire an AIM-7 at him that smokes, he's got to honor the shot. You're now 2v1. So he'll commit to that missile, and the second missile you fire gets him, because now he's in range. Well, this guy was looking out of the cockpit. Why, I have no idea. But he saw the missile coming up at him. He was high enough in the atmosphere to leave a contrail, and the contrail did a 180. Damn, we missed that one. His wingman didn't see us. He comes by. We're supersonic in the turn. Rolled out behind the guy at about 6,000 feet and fired a missile. And the missile either went up the tailpipe and cut the MiG to pieces, or went up next to him, and the proximity fuse worked and it cut him to pieces. By the time we got up to him, the pilot, he was already in a dirty yellow parachute. We were still supersonic, and he had to go to the flight surgeon to get his ears checked. At that point, a MiG saddled up on us, and we took it to the dirt. We were about 100 feet, and the airplane we had was the one that we had tuned up. The limiting airspeed on the F-4 on the deck is 714 knots calibrated airspeed. It's for the bolts holding the windscreen in. So when you had that recce going like a Solid S8, the windscreen was gonna, if it ever came in, you were gone. And the MiG stayed with us. That was our first intel they had new MiGs, because the old MiGs couldn't stay with us. We were at 850 calibrated, above 1,000 miles an hour, at about 2 to 3, maybe somewhere. We were clear of the trees. The trees were about 200 feet in that area. So, and finally he ran out of gas. Lucky us. When we finally found a tanker that would come north to get us, we ended up on the tanker. We had 2,400 pounds of fuel. That's about 400 gallons. That was in 3 airplanes. So nobody was going home until we got on the tanker. And we all took enough gas to stay everyone before we took a load of fuel to go home. You know, when things are working out for you, there's nothing better than having good luck. Especially if somebody's on your shoulder watching. My roommate, Roger Locker and Bob Lodge, got shot down, and they had 3 kills going after their 4th kill when they got shot down by Big 19. So that sets who's going to. Each of the squadrons had a primary 4 ship for air-to-air. So who's going to run the Nichols 4 ships? The only person that could was Steve Ritchie. I worked for him in weapons. He said, "You want to fly with me every day?" I said, "Yes." So I gave up being a high-speed FAC and started flying air-to-air every day. So I knew that if I didn't get shot down on today's mission into Hanoi, I was already in tomorrow's schedule. And we're flying together, and you tell me that I don't have a good feeling about today's mission, there's no way in hell I'm going with you. I'm sorry. If you're worried about dying, go do it somewhere else. So, now, I missed out on a kill. At the end of May, my number came up to go on R&R. So, my wife and I'd been over there for about 6 months. I come all the way home to Sacramento. My wife has a cabin in Lake Tahoe. We go up there on the 31st. Steve gets a kill on the 31st, his 2nd kill. So we wake up on the 1st of June at Lake Tahoe, and it had snowed. Tell me I was wrong. Of course, when I got back, I got a lot of crap for missing that kill. But you know, it all worked out in the end. So we had a dry spell for a while, and then on 8 July, we're coming in with the egress cap. We rotated the combat air patrol missions around to all the different squadrons. We had 3 different types of missions. The ingress cap led the force in. So they were the first guys into Hanoi. So they screened for MiGs. The MiG cap went in on TOT but they didn't stay with the strikers, the guys carrying bombs. They roved around. Each of the fighters that had bombs had a air-to-air guy next to him. But if the F4 guarding the bombers gets attacked by MiGs, the MiGs are going Mach 2, you never catch them. So it was our job to screen for that and make sure nobody got through us. And then you had the egress cap. As everybody's coming out of Hanoi low on gas, we're going in. We're the rear guard. And today we were the rear guard. The strikes were downtown. We're over here. 2 F4s call out of Hanoi with firelights. Now, you got a problem if you have a firelight. You only got 1 engine. All right?
Yes.
If you got 1 engine on fire, use the other one. Don't be announcing to God in the North Vietnamese that you got a firelight, that you're a wounded animal. You know, out in the fields, if there's a wounded rabbit, or the foxes are going to get him, right? Well, that's what happened. First off, the first call was blue bandits. We color-coded everything. Red, white, and blue was MiG-17, MiG-19, MiG-21. Black bandit was bingo fuel. He was going to be easy. Green bandit was an ace. How do we know that? Don't ask. So anyway, the MiGs were 030 for 30. And then they started coming around Hanoi. And they ended up in a valley about 35 miles southwest of Hanoi. And we're heading east at this point. We meet in the valley. We don't see anybody. We're using the EC-121, our version of AFAAs. We don't use call signs, we use voice. I know all the controllers love voice. And finally the controller says, "Follow," which was our call sign that day. "You're merged." And he was scared. Because on his radar scope, everybody was in the same radar band. We couldn't tell who was who. So for 2 minutes or so, there's 8 guys with heads on swivels looking for 2 little bitty airplanes. We're moving northeast, and we weaved. We never went anywhere in a straight line. The Air Force smoked real bad, so if you want to know where the enemy is, he's behind you. So finally we did a 180 and headed south, and as soon as we rolled out southwest, on the southwest heading, I found a black fly speck on a white cloud at 11 o'clock. Flight's on. Our signal to the other 3 guys with us that we were getting ready to fight was when you blew the tanks off the airplane, went to full afterburner, and accelerated out in front. Catch me if you can. Very shortly thereafter, a MiG-21 came by us. It was a shiny, brand new airplane, Wing Commander airplane. And the guy was looking at us when he went by. That was the bait. I had read his tactics manual. The first guy was going to come through, turn away. We were supposed to follow him. Second guy comes through and shoots us down. That only works if you haven't read his manual. So now the F4 is not an F-16. It is not a 9G airplane. If you read the book, it's an 8.5G airplane. If you don't read the book, it's a 12G airplane. In combat, there are no G limits.
Thank you.
So we waited. Now the way to get the F4 turned around is you roll it to 135 degrees of bank. 500 knots, stick in your lap. 17 seconds later, you roll through, you go in the opposite direction. So we did that. We rolled up and waited. And here comes the number 2 MiG, the shooter. Chugga, 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 chugga. Gets a beamless and turns away, follows his lead. He's making a level turn. So instead of having to go all the way around the circle again, we cut the circle. We ended up 6,000 feet in trail. And you gotta wait for the system. It's an analog system. It takes 2 seconds for the radar to have good data and 2 seconds for the missiles to get programmed. 4 seconds in a dogfight is 12 eternities. Guaranteed. But you gotta wait. We fired 2 missiles. The first one cut the airplane in 2 and burned both ends, and the second missile went through the fireball. The other guy had come full circle and was attacking number 4. We came back in the fight. We're 4,000 feet away from him. It's an aft missile that we're firing. The first time I saw the missile was when it exited the wingtip area. Don't bent for leather. I think the missile motor was still burning when it hit him, cut him in 2 and burned both ends. At that point, the North Indies would not commit 2 MiGs coming down from the north and 2 other MiGs coming up from the south to help out. We found out later these guys were either green aces or we're going to make them green. Instead, we sent them to their happy hunting ground. That fight took 1 minute and 29 seconds.
Wow.
So longest minute and 29 seconds I've ever lived. So now, whenever we got MiG kills, we'd always come back to the base. Now, you've seen the Thunderbirds, you've seen the Blue Angels, they do a great job. They practice. They're really good because they practice a lot. We would talk about it on the tanker. Take a full load of gas, we'd enter the traffic pattern at Udorn, 90 degrees to the runway, looking at the tower. And we would just clear the TV antennas. For all you young kids, that's what we use for TV reception. And just shy of the tower, we would veer off. We come around, come up initial at 200 feet, at 500 knots in a diamond formation. And whoever got MiG kills would pull up out of the fight and roll. That's the most dangerous part of the mission. Also, it was illegal. And then we join back up, come back around, up initial at 200 feet, echeloned into the break. So if we're going to turn to the right to land, everybody was on the right side. So lead had to pitch up, make sure his tail's clear of everybody before he turned to downwind and never rolled out. And then 2 would join on the runway. 2 would join us right after we touched down and we taxied off as 2-2 ships. Also illegal. And nobody said anything. They couldn't. We were going to Antarctica. That's the worst thing you could do to us. So, but it was great fun. Very costly though. So that was Steve's 3rd and 4th kill, my 2nd and 3rd. On the 20th of August, the target was Taiwan up in here. And the weather was bad, so we decided to go check the weather out. And in doing so, we found out, yeah, the target's clear, so the strikers can come in. But we ran ourselves out of gas. So we're heading home. And I've got a combat tree bird with an IFF interior in it for the MiG-21. And we headed home, and I happened to look at the radar and triggered it. There's a target 70 miles ahead of us. So I wait a few minutes, I trigger it again. He's 65 miles, we're opposite heading. What more could you ask for? So we get in, Steve keeps asking the GCI controllers, what's his altitude? Well, I knew he was high. And about the 3rd time he asked for the altitude, I told him, on the newer airplanes, more modern airplanes, the radar will tell you the altitude of the target. I'm the biggest computer in the airplane. I had to figure out the math in my head to know that he's at 25,000 feet. So there's 4 guys chasing this MiG. There's 4 guys coming down from the north after this MiG, and we're head on to him. He's not going home. Who's going to get him? Well, we're the closest. Since we're head on, we're closing fast. It has to be a snap attack. We would pull up and fire, but because we didn't want the missile to miss and lock onto a friendly, we have to convert to the rear. So it's a supersonic snap conversion to 6 coming around, and the missile, Steve fired 2 missiles in the turn, which were out of range, and I'm yelling at him, don't fire the other 2. And we roll out. The target, the MiG rolled off the radar scope. The radar never broke lock. It kept in contact with that MiG the whole time. We rolled out behind him 4 miles with 100 knots of overtake and waited. And finally, after 15 seconds or so, the end range light came on and Steve fired the other 2 missiles. The 3rd missile went by him on the left. He saw it and turned. Thank you very much. The 4th missile got him. So that was Steve's last mission. Duke was grounded. Steve was grounded with me. I was grounded with mayonnaise. That decision came from higher headquarters. How high? I have no idea. We weren't allowed to fly combat anymore. On one hand, I was not happy not flying combat. On the other hand, the guys that had supported us wanted the chance. So this gave them a chance to bump up because we weren't going to be flying. Now, I could still fly, I just couldn't fly combat. So I was relegated to picking up repaired airplane, battle damaged airplanes that have been repaired at the different bases around Southeast Asia with new guys. Shit, I'd rather go to Hanoi. You're safer. So I switched it. When Steve got grounded, I started flying full time with John Madden. John and Steve had the same basic capabilities. Steve had never flown in the back seat. John had been a backseat pilot in the F4, so he was very easy to fly with. He was very smooth, never got wild. Under high stress, he was just as cool as a cucumber. So we start flying. On the 2nd of September, I picked up 2 MiGs, head on to us, high. So we're gonna do a snap attack again, pulled up right under, we're going straight up, right under the MiGs, fired 2 M7s at them, both missiles guided perfectly, neither one of them detonated. I mean, that wasn't, you know, it pays to be lucky. They were lucky that day. And as soon as the missile went by, One of them did a wave off the wing and just dove down, the other one just went straight ahead. Of course, we couldn't catch him. That was not a good day. A week later, on the 9th of September, we're up. This is a lithograph of that mission. We're up by Thud Ridge, right up here, and they tell us to go orbit Fukin. You gotta be crazy to do that. This runway, they have guns. It's a Soviet-style air base. The Soviets keep lots of guns around their air bases. So orbiting Fukin was not conducive to long life. It really helped the fact that we were not sane. Sane guys wouldn't do this shit. You know? So we ended up heading down to Fukin, just north of the base. Bud Harbor Road, the backseater number 3 calls out a Sam right 3 o'clock inbound. Look over there, it's not a Sam, it's a MiG-21. It's this guy who is trying to land. I locked on to him, fired 2 radar missiles at him. It's an analog set. We're high, looking down at the ground on him, so the radar transfer is locked to the ground. And we fired 2 AIM-7s. Unfortunately, earth kills didn't count. By that time, we're moving. We're at 650. The MiG is doing 200. And we have to turn, so we're doing a high-speed turn, trying to slow down, and we end up on the guy's wing. We have a D model F4, an old F4, no gun. We're sideways trying to cross control the airplane to kill off all the airspeed we can, and we end up on his wing. And all we can do as we join up with him, and he looks over at us, go, hi. And he picked up he's out of gas, which means he's very lightweight. He picks up the gear and flaps and turns into us. Now, as great as the F4 was, it's a pig down slow and low to the ground. At 200 knots or 240 knots, it's not very maneuverable. And if you're not careful, you can put it out of control in a heartbeat. So we do 3 horizontal rolling scissors with this guy, and he pulls him out the fight. We commit number 3 in. 3 shoots him with 2 AIM-9s. They guide perfectly. Again, no detonation. So he has an E model which has a Gatling gun in it. He taxis up to the back of the airplane, gets about 500 feet behind him, and emptied the gun into him. That's 550 rounds. And you could see that everything's sparkling around the MiG, and finally the MiG driver punched out and almost hit the airplane. He hit the F4. At that point, we headed back up to Thud Ridge, got the flight joined back up so that we were offensive again, and crossed the Red River Valley, 15 miles west of Hanoi. And I picked up 1 radar blip, 8 miles, 11 o'clock. It wasn't ours. We knew that, because we were the last Americans in Hanoi. It turned out to be, we saw them before they saw us. We had 90 degrees to turn on. Turns out they MiG-19s. We'd never fought MiG-19s. I don't know if you did. They told us their best pilots flew the airplane. Hard to fly. It had unboosted controls, so it took a guy with 1 big arm to go, 10 Gs. And when they saw us, tanks come off the airplane and they go whack, and he stood it on his tail. Fight song. It was gonna be dead. We were out of gas. We thought about running, but we couldn't run, so we couldn't run. So we didn't have gas to go fast. So we had to fight. We fired 2 AIM-9Js. It was the latest heat-seeking missiles the Air Force had. The AIM-9J had a 40 G capability. So if the target's pulling 10 Gs, the AIM-9 will go to 40 Gs to get turning on. And we fired 2 of them at the trailing MiG. 1 of them prox fused, and at least 1 of them did. And the MiG was on fire when he left the fight. And he was out of the picture. We didn't even see him leave. The other guy was a threat. He was moving on the back canopy. I think in 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, he's gonna have golf balls, size slugs going by the cockpit. So they fired a 30mm slug. If that goes through the engine, it cleans it out. There is nothing left. And you go, this is gonna hurt. And the A9, when it sees a heat source, it puts a growl in your headset, and it was growling loud. So John committed the missile. And the first thing the missile did was it went, the MiG's over here, it goes, we go, it's going for the sun. This is really gonna hurt. No, it's pulling lead. You know, if you hunt bird, ducks, geese, dove, you don't shoot the bird, you shoot the front of the bird. Let the bird fly into the BBs. The missile was pulling lead, and it got enough turning room. It did a little whifferdale out here, and it's headed into the MiG. It hit the MiG in the afterburner eyelids. Now he's pulling 6, 7, 8 Gs, I don't know what. He's pulling a bunch. He rolls out, rolls inverted, and does a split S. If I was an instructor observing this, I would say, you got a 10 for the split S for the first 90 degrees, because it was perfect. But then he hit the ground. And he was out of the picture. As soon as he was out of the picture, the AAA came up, and our number 4 took a hit in the fuel cells. So we sent them straight ahead, and they jumped out in Laos, and our number 5 flew over them, and was a radio relay and got the SAR going. And then we sat behind to make sure nobody followed them out, and then went to the heavens. We were about 48,000 feet. We were low on gas. I had figured out that we had maybe enough gas to get home. We decided not to go for a tanker, because if you miss the tanker, you're not going home. So we decided to go all the way. And the glide ratio of the F4 when it's low on gas is 2,000 feet, 2 miles for every 1,000 feet of altitude. So we're at 48,000 feet. So we could probably start down to about 90 miles. We went into about 75, 80 miles when we started down. And when we turned final, for those of us that are old, when you got in your car and the gas gauge is reading 0, and you tapped it, and it bounced a little bit, and you felt comfortable. This one wasn't bouncing. We didn't have enough gas in the airplane to do anything. So we kept the gear up to a very short final, and dropped the gear and landed, and the rest was history. Why did we do what we did? Well, it was the best, for a fighter pilot, it's the best mission we fly. Now, I enjoy dropping bombs, but going up and killing another airplane, it's the best mission you fly. It's the gladiators going in it, you know when you lost because you did. They get the best of you. And we did this every day. We handpicked the guys that flew with us. They didn't ask any questions about which way we're going. They knew we were always close into contact. We were very comfortable with the people we flew with. If you're on the team and your time to go home is up, we weren't like the Navy. The Navy, everybody deploys at the same time. We get people walking into the squadron all the time. So if it's your time to go home and we have to hire a new guy, you get one ride. And I don't care what your rank is, because we had a colonel try out for us. And at the end of the first ride, the second lieutenant flying with the colonel says, I ain't flying with him again. I said, thanks, sir, but no. So it's a very particular type of guy that flew with us. You had to be very good at what you did, subject matter expert in your airplane. And you had to be crazy. And you had to have a death wish. If you told me you had a fear of dying, you weren't on the team. You couldn't have a fear of dying. Because if you had a fear of dying, you weren't paying attention. You were not looking at what's going on and knowing what to do. And by doing the way we did it, which is different from the Navy, we kept everybody alive. We only lost one guy, and that was due to getting a hit. Now, what did I learn? Well, I learned a lot about me. when you're going into handle every day, you learn about you and what you can handle and the guys next to you. And you have to be able to trust everybody on the team. Otherwise, you're worried about too much. So, when I got to Southeast Asia, I was kind of an introvert. When I left, I wasn't. My wife, Sally, had no idea what I was doing. Not a clue. And then when I went home on R&R, and my roommate was picked up, his picture showed up in the newspaper. And she was reading that. Isn't this your roommate? Yeah. What were you guys doing? Nothing. Yeah, she had no clue what I was doing. And she didn't find out till years later some of the stuff that went on. Because it's no use both of us wearing it like me. Hell, man. She was back in the States. She had no clue. She got a letter from me every day that said, I love you. It also said I was alive last week. And that's all it said. You might think Duke got to stay flying most of his career. I'd love to have done that. But with my notoriety in the Air Force, they go, we're gonna have you do other things. Yeah. Go fix this broken unit. Go fix that broken unit. Of course, it was non-flying. I went to aircraft maintenance in the Air Force at a fighter wing at Seymour. I spent 4 years at Seymour, a year in ops flying, 2 years in maintenance. They wouldn't give me a maintenance code, so I'm gonna quit flying the airplane. And then I finished up as a year in command. So it all worked out. I went to Army War College, and I have some good buddies in the Army. Why they want to be on the ground, I don't know. We had Marines at Army War College. The Marine aviators were just like we were, kind of laissez-faire, didn't care. And in our class, we had a Marine Colonel Select Infantry. They were data rank. He and I were both on our respective services colonel's list, and I pinned on Colonel first. So before I pinned on, it was Hank and Chuck. After I pinned on, it was Hank and Sir. And we had no rank there. The only guy you had to call Sir was the 2-star, the 1-star, and the ambassador. The instructors were all first name basis. So, but you learn an awful lot about yourself. And I learned a lot of lessons that paid dividends while I was flying, paid dividends while I was in ground jobs, managing people, bases, and it paid dividends when I was out in industry, running things. Nobody knew what I was doing, which was just fine. My first job after the Air Force was at an electronics company, which I had no idea what I was doing, in a program where they were $5.5 million into a $3 million government contract. They were losing their shirt, getting ready to go bankrupt. And I thought, damn, I made a mistake coming here. My measure of merit was to find $500,000 worth of profit. God, I was scared to death. It took me 3 months. Nobody in that program had any clue what they were doing. So I just provided some direction, some clarification, and I never let Boeing, which was our contractor, do anything that I didn't think was right. My first meeting with Boeing, it started at 10 o'clock in the morning. Boeing, quality guy for Boeing got on the line at 10:15, and they wanted to go look at some slides that I already talked about. I said, no, I'll talk to you offline. I'm not keeping all my people working here while you and I chit-chat. That's what we do. It's just taking charge. Taking charge, knowing what you know, being a risk taker. Fighter pilots are all risk takers. Every time you climb into the jet, you're taking a risk. You gotta know what you're doing. And I've been very successful at everything I've done. I've never had a failure. Of course, now that I said that. But anyway, hey, so what do the aces do? They look the enemy in the eye and shoot him. They go where other people won't go. They said that 10% of the pilots get 90% of the kills, and that's probably correct. Steve, we had to take 2 check rides when I was in combat. A 10th mission check to make sure you get fly combat. I took mine on my 25th mission because I was already waived to do everything. And then med tour, you take another check ride. And Steve was due a check ride, and the guys that were supposed to give him the check ride were not going to Hanoi. They wanted Steve to fly on a mission in South Vietnam. I said, no, I'll make room on you for 1 mission. Well, they wouldn't do that. They would not go to Hanoi. So on the 28th of August, when Steve made ace, they filled out a check ride for him. I don't even think any of them were airborne. It's just the paperwork. So, if you're doing everything right, you get to take a hero picture. That was my party suit. I can guarantee you, a new backseater coming in the nickel, seeing that was intimidated by it. Guaranteed.
6 skills.
When I got the pilot training, we went to our first function in mess dress. I had more medals than all the instructors put together. Except all of mine were combat. That sits at the Air Force Museum. It sits right across from Robin Owens' airplane. That's the jet I flew, 463.
Air Force Academy.
That's the jet I flew, 463. Now, about 7 years ago, when Navy played Air Force and Air Force in football, they painted the jet blue. The discriminating midshipmen would have used the water-based paint. They didn't, they used lacquer.
Oh.
The cost to repaint the airplane got back to Annapolis before they did. They were not happy. It was, I don't know, $7,000. I guess that's it. Are there any questions? No. I haven't had either a chance or a desire. I know the guys that come over here and not being able to meet with them, but you know, it's come by now, it's drinking buddies. And that's how we are. You know, we were fighting to the death, but the war's over. So we'll go drinking together. Some of that beer was okay. Some of it was cut with formaldehyde. So when you got pickled, you were pickled. You know, somebody asked me if I'd change anything in my career. I said, no. What would you change? And it's a house of cards. Change one thing, changes everything. So it all started out when I first got in this Air Force. I washed out of pilot training. Had I not done that, I wouldn't be here. Think about it. When somebody gives you a bunch of lemons, make lemonade. Don't sit there and go, woe is me. Yeah. They don't pay you to do that. They pay you to make things right. So you get a job you don't want, because the units failed. It's one of the best jobs you can have. Find the right sergeants working for you, change things. At Massawa, I almost killed myself one day. We're tearing down a World War II Japanese barracks, and Sergeant Chapman is running a front end loader to tear the barracks down. What could go wrong? And I drive up, and he says, oh, you're the new base commander. Yes, I am. I said, can you drive one of these things? No, I have. I said, get up here, I'll show you how. So I'm sitting down in the front end loader, and he's showing me what to pull, how to make it work. And he says, okay, now drive it in. So I drive it into the building, and I go,
You dummy, you just knocked down the uprights holding the second floor up. I can see the accident report. Yeah. So I very gingerly backed out, got off the thing and thanked him and drove off. But I had a great career in what I did. I met some great people, aces, some, a lot that weren't, all great. We're all here for the same reason, to keep this country free. Right now, we're in harm's way.
Yes, we are.
Ukraine is going strong. The Russians aren't doing very well. That's dangerous. The IDF, they're getting ready to take names. That's going to be dangerous also. You have a lot of people who don't understand why the Israelis were attacked and why they're attacking back. And then there's China and North Korea. We thought that when the Soviet Union fell apart, there was peace at hand, finally. So the Congress took the peace dividend out of the military budget. We've been suffering ever since. We have got to get our forces in order for the next war. As George Washington said, if you wish to avoid insult, it must be known that you can repel it. If you want to avoid war, it must be known that you're ready for war at all times. Because if you're not, there'll be a little devil out there that covets what you have. And they're there. And our southern border, it's criminal.
Thank you.
So, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a pleasure being with you. I couldn't ask for a better group to be with. Thanks a lot.
The American Fighter Aces Association was founded in 1960 to recognize the over 1,450 combat pilot from World War I to the present that achieved the status of American Fighter Ace by destroying 5 or more hostile aircraft in air-to-air combat.